Hopefully. Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 124. As always, I am going to start us off with a tune.
But
Okay, then. Sunni Taliban. Yeah, the Middle East is rife with bloody tribal infighting. Best thing we should have done is just restore the monarchy in Afghanistan and be done with it.
Man. Sorry about that, chaps. Can you hear me, Mitch?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool, mate. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what went on there. Something nonsense. Also, we'll try that again. Thanks, Dorsastic Draco, in the chat. There we go. Right. Let's try this again.
send for just God.
Russian rocket raccoon guardian of the nest. I mean, oddly enough, there are people who call the raccoon Little Novichok. So, Marvel has that rocket in the Guardians of the Galaxy. Russians got Little Novichok.
Okay, I don't know what's going on with that, so we're going to leave it this week. Mitch, how you going, mate?
Same old.
And this week you are the Russian raccoon mascot of the Russian airborne forces. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he's nicknamed Little Novichok by Russian Telegram at this point.
What does Novichok mean? Is it just a name?
That whole Julius, that Skripal gay-up that happened in 2018, I think it was. The poison that was allegedly used to kill them, but to injure them, both or whatever it was called Novichok.
So, okay, right. And was it? I'm sure that I'm not sure if it was this year or the year before, but they did actually have a raccoon who was on quite a lot of videos, didn't they? The Russian forces.
Yeah, because that was when they were pulling out of Kherson.
They found one somewhere, didn't they?
Yeah, there was a zoo in Kherson, and a part of that zoo was a raccoon part, and generally it was a situation where apparently because the logistics weren't really great for the Russians near Kherson, the animals apparently were starting to starve, especially the raccoon, which is why they took him because I mean they formed an attachment to some of the animals apparently from what I've heard, and they took the raccoon as sort of a mascot. Apparently Novichok, I just looked it up. It means newbie or new lad. That sort of
okay, fair enough. So it's like he's like a recruit kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like new guy who's our mascot. That's why I call him Little Novichok at this point.
Fair enough. It's funny because soldiers very often form attachments to animals and stuff, especially dogs and what have you. I mean, everywhere the British Army goes, it collects dogs.
Yeah, it's like you have the Polish Army. Well, yeah, so the army always has dogs because dogs are generally very damn good at nighttime, especially if you get intruders and the dog will bark for you. Or
that's true.
Cats for the Royal, or you got cats for the Royal Navy who'd kill off any rats who tried to disrupt food supply.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Royal Navy ships also used to have terriers sometimes for the same reason.
Terriers? I thought it was usually just cat.
No. The Royal Navy. The Royal Navy also used to have terriers for the same reason, to kill off rats. And of course, you had HMS Bulldog, which was a World War II British destroyer, which famously had a bulldog as its mascot.
Yeah, I mean, you got Wojtek the bear, who the Polish army, the Polish army that got sent over to the UK after the fall of Poland. They had the bear as their mascot. Wojtek, I think his name was. What else?
Same with the Canadians in World War One. The Canadians had a black bear, and that was where the whole Winnie the Pooh thing comes from. The Canadians arrived. The Canadian Expeditionary Force arrived in the UK, and they had a black bear cub. And when he got too big to be safe to have as a mascot anymore, they gave him to London Zoo, where he became hugely popular, and that was where the author got the idea. And his name was Winnie, and that's where the whole Winnie the Pooh thing comes from.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like I know the Norwegians have like a penguin because there's like a god they've got who often come over to the UK, and there's like this penguin they call King Hakon because it's named after that. I don't know if it's Hakon the Seventh or whichever number he had.
The guy
back
in World War
War
II.
II.
Yeah. Who wouldn't surrender to the Germans? Yes, I'm sure that's the bloke you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he's also like the only other thing I know about him is apparently when Queen Elizabeth's father died in 1952-53, and at the funeral, Hakon apparently cried because the thing was our royal family had pretty much married into every royal family there was, especially like the Danish, Norwegian. Yeah, so in a way, I suppose you can say Queen Victoria was like the grandmother of Europe at one point.
Very much so. Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, like even Kaiser Bill was her grandson, I believe.
Yeah, apparently he was a favourite, but the thing was,
her favourite daughter as well.
What, Alexandra, I think her name was.
I can't remember what her name was, but she was Queen Victoria's favourite daughter. But of course, the bloke she married, who I reckon would have been a damn fine Kaiser, died of cancer or something. Quite young.
Yeah, that was Year of Three Emperors, I believe, like 1888, I think it was, where you had the first Kaiser who was generally all right with Bismarck, the second Kaiser who was also all right with Bismarck, but then, of course, you have Kaiser Wilhelm, who sacks off Bismarck and causes a whole chain of events that lead up to World War One, along other things.
Adam in the chat is confirming that Norway has a penguin, which you were just talking about, Mitch.
Yeah, I only started talking about penguin because Adam mentioned it to begin with.
Oh, okay, sorry. Dorsastic Draco in the chat says Schenkin ran away from the Royal Works for 4 weeks. I presume this is the mascot. Like British Army has all sorts of mascots, like Irish wolfhounds, Scottish deerhounds, Shetland ponies, you name it, and the British Army's got it as a mascot. So, although obviously I dare say the Ministry of Defence are doing their best to remove those things, like they are everything else traditional about the British Armed Forces. But there we go.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I can't say I've ever heard of anything like, but I mean, I know of the old South Staffs Regiment. You used to have a staffy as a mascot, but it's been a while since the South Staffs Regiment was even a thing. So,
can I just say, sorry to interrupt you, Mitch. Duke Valentino in the chat, very kind of you to say that, but the thing you put, the third post you made there, mate, don't third post in my chat, please. Just don't do it, or I will kick you. So yeah, sorry, Mitch, carry on, mate.
Yeah, I mean, the South Staff Regiment hasn't really been a thing for bloody years, but I know they used to have a staffy as their mascot, which...
That would make sense, and they're lovely dogs. They're such lovely dogs, staffies. I love Staffordshire Terriers. They're so cool.
Yeah.
An old lady I used to live next to years ago had one. We got our house on fire, and she went to. When she came back, she got me a big picture of that. It's on the wall. I have to remember what it's called now because my Latin is. Carpanum, which is basically Latin for beware of the dog from ancient Rome. And she got me a big picture of that when she went to Rome. And she went to Rome because she was a big time Christian and wanted to go for that reason. But she knew I liked ancient history, so and dogs, so she got me that. That was cool.
Yeah, I know. I know of farmers who live not far from here. They're big fans of like the Anglo-Saxon and Vikings, so they'll just name their dogs. Like they got a staffy they call Rollo after Rollo, who created the Norman dynasty that William the Conqueror descended from. And then,
Oh yeah, okay. Who was like in that rubbish series Vikings? Yes, I remember that.
yeah, it's like,
The series was crap, but it did include some real names for sure.
well, yeah, it's like you have, for example, what some of the timelines were whack. Like, I have Ragnar Lothbrok, who's like 30 years old, and discovers Lindisfarne and starts raiding there. But historically, he died in like 865 when the Great Heathen Army was gathering because, yeah, they invaded England to avenge him. But then we thought, okay, this land actually might be we could take it over, and because Scandinavia was getting overpopulated, I believe, hence the Viking era. So yeah, and then what else?
Yeah.
Then you had what was it? The Wessex
hang on,
troops
I'm trying
had
to-
Burgonet helm. Yeah, what was it? Like the Wessex troops had Burgonet helmets 700 years earlier, apparently.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, animals are always related to soldiers, and I think soldiers get dogs because dogs are extremely loyal and extremely brave, which is kind of what you hope for a soldier to be. So
Yeah, I don't. I mean, what? I mean, well, I can't
Dorsastic
think of a
Draco in
single
the chat is saying the Irish Guards were formed in 1900, which is true. They were formed in 1900 because of the extreme gallantry of the Irish regiments in the British Army during the Anglo-Boer War by Queen Victoria. So yeah, that's true. But yeah, there's always been loads of Irish soldiers in the British Army. That's absolutely true. Sorry, Mitch, carry on.
yes, isn't it also that the Anglo-Irish aristocracy were also kind of a younger class in a way? Like they would often.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Protestant ascendancy, if that's the correct term, in Ireland and in Northern Ireland were absolutely the closest that the British came to a younger class for sure.
Yeah, I know. Duke of Wellington was one for certain, and like, I know the Irish.
Yes.
I mean, because the thing is, there was
Yes.
I think you know the interview was speak. You know that Irish soldier who's on I don't know what TV show it was. Well, he was like back in his 70s or 80s. You know, and he's saying he was one of the old contemptibles. Like he was part of the BEF in the early days, and he was an Irishman who basically said, yeah. And his whole and like he said, for example, most Irish who joined the army, they did it because if you were an Irishman and you wanted to see the world, or you didn't want to fancy becoming a potato farmer, you join the British Army or Navy, and you get to see the world, whether it be India
Yes.
or whatever.
Very much so. Duke Valentino in the chat is saying, are there still a lot of Irish in the British forces from the Republic of Ireland? Surprisingly more than you'd think, Duke Valentino. The Irish Guards in particular have a lot of Southern Irish dudes in their ranks still. So yes, you'd be surprised. And in World War II, when the Republic of Ireland was supposedly neutral, over a third of the Irish defence forces deserted and went north and joined the Brits to get into a fight. So there you go.
Like it's the one that did that, given that 20 years before, like the Irish were fighting a brutal war against us, against the Black and Tans especially. But then, as soon as war happens between Britain and Germany, they follow it on our side. Well, I say follow it on our side, I mean the Irish who joined us, yeah.
Yep.
So, but then was
and it
like,
took them, by the way, decades. It took. Carry on, Mitch.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what the deal was with the whole pensions. Like, what was it happened to them after the war? Because was a lot of very shamed by government or whatever.
Yeah, the guys who deserted from the Irish Defence Forces, even if they served in the Irish Defence Forces for like 12, 15 years or whatever it was, and went north and joined the British forces, for decades afterwards, their pension rights were denied. but they got them back eventually. But it took them like, I don't know, 30 years or something before they did.
Yeah, I never understood why they did. I mean, I can understand because Eamon de Valera was he was the guy who tried to get the Irish to reject the treaty and carry on fighting, even though, what was it, something like the IRA at the time, in the War of Independence, as I call it, they only had we had like a month's worth of ammunition before they would have run out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a situation where but you had like the treaty with Michael Collins versus Eamon de Valera.
Yeah.
And like Eamon de Valera was massively like anti-British, I believe.
Yeah, so whereas Collins just wanted a peace treaty because I think I'm not a big fan of Collins, but I think he was just fed up with people dying, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised though if he was just thinking, okay, well, we've only got like 1 month's worth of ammunition left, and we can't really rely on there being any more ammo after it's all exhausted, even though all the Irish Americans, or plastic paddies as we love to call them, might fund us to the extreme. But there was that. So yeah, it's a bit ironic though that in all that, like the last few wars we've had with the Irish, we could have won had we prolonged them, but it's just exhaustion on our side that pushed us to make a deal with them, even to a point where, in hindsight, we just look at it and go, yeah, had we kept on fighting just a little while longer, they would have surrendered. Anyway, it's a bit ironic twist of fate.
Well, it was the Liberal Party that included at the time Winston Churchill, of course. So explains a lot to me. But I'm no fan of Winston Churchill. I don't Duke Valentino. I don't think Collins did betray Ireland. Actually, whatever. Asymmetric warfare. Yeah, right. Okay. I'm not going to get into this now. I do want to do a stream on Northern Ireland at some point with people who actually come from Northern Ireland. Alex Little in the chat is saying, didn't the army almost rebel? Yeah, absolutely. The British army and the British army officers, many of whom, as Mitch was saying, were from Ireland, did almost rebel over it, yes. And there are those people who say one of the reasons Britain joined World War I when it did, which of course was a total disaster for Britain, one of the reasons Britain joined it was because it meant that the stuff that was going on in Ireland didn't matter anymore, because all of a sudden the greater patriotism took over, and like many thousands of Irishmen volunteered to go and fight Germany, for God's sake. But so yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my knowledge of Ireland pretty much exhausted. I mean, it's a pity not on Telegram though, because I mean, there's a channel I linked in the history part, because it's all about, because it's like there's also like another channel where it's just all photos of like the Rhodesian and Namibian bush wars, where you'd have like South Africa, where you have the SADF, I believe they were called, or South African Army. Spent my time just fighting.
The one I served in, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I can't remember if it was South African Defence Force or South African Army.
It was the South African Defence Force, SADF. Duke Valentino says there's no way the British could have survived into the mid-20s. I think, just because Mitch just brought it up, lots of people said that about Rhodesia, and look how long they lasted. And they were a hell of a lot more outnumbered than the British were. And for your information, Duke Valentino, my mother was Irish from the Republic, whereas my father was an Englishman and a former British soldier. And I did 2 tours in Northern Ireland in the 1980s because I'm an old bastard. So there you go. With the British Army, by the way. I joined the South African Defence Force when I moved to South Africa in 1985. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I don't suppose you would have met any Cubans, would you? Well, I can't remember them of a battle now.
I knew blokes who had captured and killed Cubans, and also East German advisors as well in Angola. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I didn't do it myself, but I knew people who had.
Yeah, because I've heard the Cubans were. I don't know how to best to explain them. They were total bastards, apparently, from what I've heard. The Cubans were. I can't remember. Like there was that one battle, a Battle of Capes. Somewhere I can't remember. But like there was about where the SADF
I think I know the one you're talking about. Go on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the SADF like could be wiped the floor with the Cubans, I believe, or Cuban trained forces.
They did. Yeah, the old SADF, which was mostly white, although my regiment wasn't, but was mostly white, could have gone from one end of Africa to the other. And there were at least 2 occasions when they would have captured the capital of Angola, but the CIA said, no, you can't do it.
I never understood why the Americans generally, they will backstab anyone, even when helping, let's say, the South Africans wipe out the MPLA in Angola, or helping us wipe out Nasser in Egypt, who himself was causing Soviet help. I never understood why American foreign policy generally screws us over, even when it's in their interest to help, whether it be the South Africans in Angola or the likes of us, the French in Egypt.
I don't disagree with what you're saying there, Mitch, but I would also point out that the British government screwed over the Rhodesians big time, and that was Maggie Thatcher, by the way, with the Lancaster House Agreement. And similarly, after the Soviet Union fell in 1989, 1990, Israel, for example, had beat Quetta Canaveral is the one that Mitch was talking about, I believe. But even in 89-90, when the Soviet Union fell, Israel had been a huge ally of the old white government in South Africa. Like the R4, I think it is basically an Israeli Galil, and many pieces of artillery and what have you that the South African Defense Force used to use were basically Israeli. And they, as soon as the Soviet Union fell, and in fact, the Israelis even helped the South Africans get nuclear weapons, for God's sake. But all of that went by the board as soon as the Soviet Union fell.
Yeah, because you also got Nelson Mandela and his usual lot. They pretty much use the same rhetoric as. I mean, everyone does that if they want to get on America's good books. They just use the whole, we're fighting for freedom and democracy, and we're fighting for equality, and yada yada yada. And of course,
you can't trust any. The point I'm trying to make, Mitch, is you can't trust any of these elites. I mean, these days the British government is plainly against average, real Anglo-Celtic British people, in the same way that the American government is against average white people in America. It just is. It's just got worse as time has gone on.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about Mizzy's story, where sort of the hostility of the government is just becoming plainly obvious. Because you got that Mizzy who got fined 360 quid, and he's got and the thing was that trespassing he did technically is put down as a civil offence, which I don't fully understand. So he technically avoids jail, but if he keeps doing it, he'll get put in jail. According to
this is the young black dude who stole a dog from some little old lady and then gave it back and invaded someone's house and all sorts of other bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going off what I know of Lotus Eaters, like Sargon and Harry Robinson and whatnot. So,
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree. Wiggles tells me in the chat, and I find this hard to believe, although in some ways I wouldn't. He's saying security at the Kremlin is run by a guy who used to be British South African police. I don't know if that's true. It could be, but I don't know. Mitch? Mitch, by the way, is a Russian. He's an English dude who is a Russian speaker, so he knows much more about this stuff than I do.
I've heard rumors of this, but I haven't seen it confirmed. I've heard like there's like some sort of Anglo or someone from South Africa, especially running with security at the Kremlin. I've actually heard about it on Telegram, but it was ages ago, so I can't tell you whether it's true or not.
British South African police were pretty good dudes back in the day. They were a paramilitary group in Rhodesia. So, yeah, they were pretty good dudes back in the day. Duke Valentino, what would I do if someone came into my gaff? Well, I will leave you to guess that.
Well, I imagine I get the Texas treatment, put it that way.
Right. Well, I couldn't shoot them, Mitch, because Australia's gun laws are almost as bad as England's. We can get. If I wanted to and wanted to go through 6 months of fucking around, I could get a Lee Enfield, but you can't get any semi-automatic weapon here.
Yeah, it's like I've heard like for gun laws in Europe, it's like you've only got the Czech Republic and Latvia. But those are the only two. I suppose you got Belarus and Russia, but I mean, you try taking a gun from most countries into the UK.
What's Belgium like these days? Belgium used to be like really easy.
I doubt you can get a gun from Belgium. Like, I doubt you can get an FAL from Belgium to London these days.
Well, you could quite easily. You just need to hide it. But yeah, I mean, have you been through the Channel ports much, Mitch? Because I have. All right, not for a while, but it used to be. They didn't search stuff very thoroughly in those days.
I mean,
or alternatively, you could get on a dinghy and they'll come and take you across.
Yeah, I mean, for my part, I've only done really one channel crossing. I was like on a school trip to Munich years ago, and like the French. Right. Yeah, the thing is, I just got an impression that the French are just like very. I mean, there's a reason I dislike the French, and that's because of my experience with them back on that school trip. Because it's just like the French police just scowled at us. They knew we were English, and we just thought, "Oh, bloody hell, these bloody English, man." So
yeah, I generally scowl back at them, to be honest with you, being they're French, but
yeah. And then you get the Belgians who are just like weird because it's like what half of them are Dutch and half of them are French, but they're self-denying about it. It's only the Dutch side that actually fesses up to being Dutch and they want to be part of the Netherlands, but they're forbidden to do so. So it's just like some unhappy union. It's like. Yeah. I just don't understand how Belgium exists. It's one of the countries that hasn't just broken up by now, and the Flemish don't just join the Netherlands, and Wallonia just joins France or something.
Well, I mean, Belgium's a pretty artificial country in many respects.
Well, yeah, it's like in Western Europe you've got Belgium. For artificial countries, I suppose you got Ukraine in the east.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I got no problem with that. I would say that's probably true. So yeah, I don't know. I suppose we should talk for a minute or two at least about what do you reckon's going on in the Biden proxy war in Ukraine.
I mean, I'm hearing on one hand that the Ukrainians have fully prepped for the offensive in Zaporozhye Oblast. So I won't be surprised if that offensive that's been hyped up for ages is actually going to happen. The problem is the Russians in that area, they've got lots of dragon's teeth and trenches and what have you. A lot of
they've got at least 3 lines of defense as far as I can work out.
Yeah, because there's like important areas like Tokmak, which is like a railroad term that connects Crimea to the Russian mainland. So that's heavily fortified. Then you got Melitopol, which again will be heavily fortified because it's a massive road network town. So you can just because you got, as I said, yeah, like defense in depth, so to speak. It's not going to be an easy ride, even if it had every NATO advantage they could get.
I mean, look, if ever an offensive has been telegraphed in the history of human warfare, this is the Ukrainian offensive that's supposedly going to happen. And look, I don't know how much you can believe all that leak stuff that came out recently, but if you do, these Ukrainian assault brigades only have like 1 to 3 companies of tanks at the most. Like they're basically somewhere between 4 and 9 companies of infantry, either in like real infantry fighting vehicles, or more often actually in like Western vehicles that were designed to fight a counterinsurgency war in Afghan or Iraq. And they only have like 1, 2, or occasionally 3 companies of tanks. So I just don't think Ukraine has the power to inflict a decisive defeat on the Russians, unless the Russians are really bloody stupid anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue the Ukrainians were originally stupid because they focused all their combat power on Bakhmut, even though all the Western advisors had told them, look, don't fight over Bakhmut, like you're meant to do this offensive, especially when you consider that the mobilized were still yet to be trained. And back in, like, let's say, just after Kharkov Oblast had fallen to Ukraine, it could have been a situation where Ukraine could have done another offensive down south and would have taken more land, demoralized the Russians, and Russia would be in a pretty bad situation. But the Ukrainians, in all their infinite wisdom, chose to take up Prigozhin's offer of a battle in Bakhmut. And as I say, the rest is history. What happened there?
I mean, look, one of the things I look at in Bakhmut is the Russians took a very long time to take it. But part of the reason they took a very long time to take it is they didn't want to take an enormous number of casualties. And they were using artillery to wear down the Ukrainians. And I don't think the Russians, I mean, I've heard figures like of around 4, 5, 6,000 dead for the Russian soldiers in Bakhmut. And quite a lot of those were the dudes who were recruited into the Wagner group from Russian prisons and stuff like that. But even those guys only lost, according to the commander of, or the guy in charge of the Wagner group, even those guys only lost like 10% of the number. In terms of dead, they lost more than that in wounded, but...
Yeah, because I mean, another reason why they loved to drag out the Battle of Bakhmut is because it gave more time for all the Russian army to just build the Dragon's Teeth, all the trenches, all the ditches, and what have you, to just prepare for this upcoming offensive off Ukraine. So
they've got these, what was it? They called up about over 300,000 soldiers. And in addition, if the Russians are to be believed, they got something like 70 or 80,000 more volunteers, which I can believe, because like every army gets more volunteers when it's actually fighting, weirdly enough. It's a strange thing, but it's true. So yeah, I don't know. Duke Valentino says, "Stop falling for propaganda, please." Mate, I don't fall for propaganda. But there is so much pro-Ukrainian, pro-NATO bullshit on the Western mainstream media that you've got to discount 99% of that shit. Some of it doesn't even make any sense, to be honest. But yeah, sorry, Mitch. Carry on, mate.
Yeah, so this like offensive that's meant to happen. I mean, a lot of the brigades that were originally earmarked for this offensive, like months ago, got rerouted to Bakhmut. They then suffer heavy casualties because it's something like 50,000 dead Ukrainians in the battle for Bakhmut, with another 70,000 wounded, which is according to Prigozhin, while 10,000 Wagner guys dead, with another 10 to 20,000 wounded. So, as far as like ratios go, it's not. I mean, it generally goes in with the rest of the war, where it's like for every Russian dead, there's like several Ukrainians dead, just off the artillery advantage alone.
Yeah, I can believe that. Hang on, Mitch, carry on talking, mate, because I'm just sending an email to somebody who may come on as a guest.
Yeah. What was I say? Oh, I believe I'm losing my train of thought. Yeah, I mean, I believe what was I saying there? I know Media Zona, who were like BBC liberal outfit in Russia, they said they can only verify like 5,500 Wagnerians killed off in Bakhmut. And like Media Zona, I mean, the thing is, like, they're along with a pussy riot group who are complete. You know, they're kind of like feminists over here in that they've all got daddy issues, to say the least. So just imagine, yeah, like they're like pussy riot. For anyone who doesn't know, they're the ones stupid enough to do a protest concert in a bloody Russian Orthodox cathedral. So
Lumbar in the chat says all 30 hypersonic missiles intercepted, also 28 towns lose their electricity. Yeah, Ukraine does this all the time. They always intercept 99% or so of all Russian missiles and guided bombs, etc. And yet they keep losing their electricity, strange to say. But yeah, it's true enough.
how hard is Russian to learn?
Duke Valentino has a question for you. Is Russian similar to Polish?
I mean, in terms of like the very basic vocabulary, yes. In terms of a more intellectual vocabulary, I mean, Polish, for example, borrows a lot from German and French. So where Russian will have its own word, Polish will borrow from German or French. So more intellectual vocabulary, shall we say? It's a bit of a mixed bag. Russian, however, it's like a mix of Old Slavic language, Old Church Slavonic, which is basically Bulgarian, so a lot of Turkic and Mongolian words from when the Golden Horde ruled over the place, and then they borrow a lot from English, German, French, etc. So there's that. But Polish is very sort of because they were Catholic. They also borrowed a lot of words from Latin, where Russian never borrowed any.
Yeah, so, Duke Valentino is saying Russia doesn't have a Latinized alphabet. I suppose that's true.
Yeah. I mean, for example, the Polish alphabet is notoriously hard because, I mean, in other words, yeah, it's because they're a Slavic language, but they're using a Latin alphabet, which it doesn't work. It should have been, Polish ought to have a Cyrillic alphabet just because it's easier to work with. Because when you look at the Polish
Valentino
alphabet,
is asking you how you learn it, how you learn Russian.
There's loads of websites I've got on my favourites bar where I just learned Russian, and also because I knew Russians when I was at university. So
yeah, I think to be fair, Mitch is one of those dudes who just has an ability with languages. You get these people sometimes. I'm thinking of people like Sir Richard Francis Burton, for example, who could speak about 24 languages. There are just people who have this facility to learn languages. I certainly don't have it at all, but some people do, and I think Mitch is probably a bit like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of how hard is Russian to learn, I mean, I'd say it's like medium difficulty. I mean, the problem is you have to be consistent with it, as with all languages. So for example, because I consistently learn it. I listen to Russian music a lot, watch Russian movies a lot, so it's generally a lot easier for me compared to someone
That
who's
that
not
would
got
help,
that
wouldn't
point.
it? What watching movies and so on would help for sure, because quite often in a film you can kind of see what they're talking about, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's however, for anyone who chooses to learn Russian, however, all I would say is yeah, be patient with grammar because grammar is really difficult. I mean, Russian grammar is notoriously hard for a damn reason because even the bloody Russians will say our grammar is hard, they can't understand it half the time. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of that Australian girl in Russia. What's her name? Is it Russian Farm Girl or something like that? She's
I think
married
so.
to she's married to a Russian dude, and she lives in Siberia, I think.
Yeah, I
She's
would
got a
say
really good channel. It's not at all political. It's just about her and her family living in Russia, and she's an Aussie
yeah,
chick, and she speaks, I think, okay Russian, doesn't she, Mitch?
yeah. I mean,
Now,
her
but
accent.
she's been
I
there
mean,
a while.
yeah. I mean, I can listen to it. It's like she's not got a very obvious accent. I mean, you can tell she's foreign when she speaks it, but she's not got a very obnoxious accent like Americans, for example, when they speak Russian, for example. So there's
Moscow.
that. Yeah. The thing is, they pronounce Moscow the German way, because the Germans say it Moscow, and the Americans just take it to the extreme with their pronunciation. Whereas we say it Moscow, which
Yeah.
is generally a lot closer to the how the Russians say it.
How do the
So
Russians say it?
Moskva.
Ah,
So
okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Or is
yeah.
Russia going to change its name soon, so that like Turkey did, so that it's got some ridiculous spelling?
I mean, Russia in Russian is literally just Russia, like ROSSIYA. So
Hmm.
it's not like with Turkish where you got that U letter with two dots above it, which we don't have in our alphabet.
Yeah.
It's like Turkey's, I mean, Turkey's just been retarded as they usually are.
I just don't get that. I mean, like I was very against when we changed the spelling of Peking, to be honest with you. To Beijing because it suited the communists. I mean, all right. The place is still the same name.
Yeah, it's like for example, you've got St. Petersburg, but the oblast it's in is still called Leningrad Oblast to this day.
Yeah.
Because for some reason they don't change it to St. Petersburg Oblast or Ingria Oblast or whatever. I don't understand that. Or
But an
you know,
oblast is kind of like the equivalent of a county, isn't it?
yeah, administrative region, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought. But I mean, it's like Rome is Roma if you're Italian, but you don't have to call it Roma if you're an English speaker, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's like what we say Rome, Germans say Rom, because it also has the same root anyway. It comes from Romulus, so there's
Of course.
no
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, it's like Greece. We call it Greece. I don't know what because it comes from a Latin word for them. While Greece in Greek is Hellas, and they call
Yes.
themselves Hellenic,
Yeah.
but you don't see the Greeks spurging out at or solve it
Because
because
someone calls it Greece, yeah, or ancient
yeah,
Greece. No one cares, I mean, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that the spelling of like Athens and Spa might be different in Greek than it is in English, but everyone knows the place you're talking about, and it just because you spell it slightly differently, exactly the same with like Rome and Roma. It doesn't mean you think less of them.
Well, yeah, it's like I know the Ukrainians at the start of the war they were spurging out at German because in German to refer to Ukraine you have to use a feminine article, whereas most countries, yeah, but that's the thing. Like most countries, like for example, if you refer to England in German, you use the masculine article, but for Ukrainians, spurgs at the Germans because they use die Ukraine, not their Ukraine. And that's why. And it's also the Polish word for Ukraine, because they refer to they have like a sort of nickname version of Ukraine, because you got to think, because Ukraine is very close to Poland, the people are very similar. It's like how Hungary has its own nicknamed version in Polish. The same with Ukraine, but the Ukraine still spurgs at the Polish, because the Polish name for Ukraine is like I can't remember, but it's like a very sort of feminine name. Like it's like a belittling name according to Ukrainians.
Well, I mean, look, Ukraine basically just means borderlands, doesn't it?
Yeah, that cry part, KRAI, that always means like borderland or strange frontier land in Slavic languages. Yeah, so it's similar to like the Welsh marches that we had in the Middle Ages, where because Ukraine was like sandwiched in between the Slavs of Russia versus the Turkic steppe nomads who dominated and would generally enslave any Slav that was defenseless.
And is it not true, Mitch, that like before World War II, the Ukrainians were pretty vile to a lot of Polish people as well as others in their territory?
I mean, it was a situation where
like
both
didn't
sides
Bandera,
filed
for
grievances.
example, the great Ukraine, Sorry, I'm just saying that Bandera, the great Ukrainian, inverted commas, didn't he kill loads of Polish women and children as well as other people he didn't like?
Yeah, I mean, Ukrainians and Poles didn't particularly get on at that period because you have the Ukrainian People's Republic in the aftermath of the Russian Revolution. They were fighting for their independence, same as Poland. But Ukraine just got screwed over by the Bolsheviks and they're having all their land taken away. The Polish, they generally just took over Western Ukraine because they thought, okay, we're not going to have all this land fall to the Bolsheviks. We're just going to take it. And the Ukrainians, they got embittered after this. So in World War II, especially with Stepan Bandera, they started chopping up loads of Polish people, especially those who had no guns on them, like women and children, in very gruesome ways.
They like chopping women and children to bits under Bandera, as far as I'm working out.
Yeah, in the case of Nestor Makhno, Black Army, I was just going to reply to something in chat. Black Army took over the Donbass. However, the anarchists, aka the Black Army, they thought they could trust the Bolsheviks, only to get screwed over by them. So,
Tomb of Arminius in the chat says Ukraine is a democracy just like us. I believe that's true, actually, Tomb of Arminius, because we're not a democracy either. So, yeah, absolutely, I believe that's true. Ukraine has like banned almost all other political parties, apparently. And I love when you watch Ukrainian tanks and they've literally got the same German cross on them as German tanks had in like 1943. I just think it's so fucking funny. But they're great guys, according to the West.
Yeah, and it's like what? You know what Zelensky's legislating for now? Gay marriage. A country which 2 years ago was unthinkable to have gay marriage in. Now, in the middle of a war.
But Mitch, in the middle of a war where you've lost about, I don't know, 20% of your male population, the most important thing you can do is like legalize gay marriage. For God's sake, man.
Yeah, you go. We're sticking it to Putin. You know, Putin has his anti-gay propaganda war.
He's Putler. Don't forget, he's Putler. Because a Nazi leader in Russia would go really well. So I just think it's so funny, but
Yeah, I mean, Zelensky is himself a special kind of retarded because what? He went over to the Arab League, no less, and basically just like bollocked him for being lukewarm in supporting him or being just neutral. And then you got the German foreign minister who visited Saudi Arabia to give a book all about feminism.
That will have gone down well in Arab countries. Yeah, they'll love that. I mean, like Muslims will chuck you off a roof if you're gay, which I don't support, by the way. But who asked me in the chat? Duke Valentino, Iron Duke, are you a supporter of same-sex marriage? No. And in the Australian referendum on that, I voted no. Sadly, not enough people did, but I voted no. Because marriage should be between a man and a woman. So there you go.
Yeah, I just got like I mean, it's like what? For example, you have Ukraine, right? They're your generic Eastern European country where a lot of people are religious, especially in the Russian Orthodox Church, shall we say, where they're getting their heads bashed in by the SBU and whatnot for going to the wrong church.
Moskansky in the chat says arresting monks is a very good use of resources when at war. And he's talking about Ukraine, of course, who were doing that to some of the Russian Orthodox monks, I believe, Mitch.
Yeah, there's this one bishop in the west of Ukraine called Vladimir, who's just generally just getting spat at in public by Ukrainians because he belongs to the wrong church. And I've also seen like photos and videos of churches in Western Ukraine getting burnt to the ground because they're on the wrong side of the Orthodox divide in Ukraine. So,
yeah, I mean, look, anyone who looks at this without the Western mainstream media bias can see that, like, Ukraine is one of the states which has more censorship and stopping of like ordinary people's life than any other nation. Far worse than Russia. I mean, even like look at Russia compared to, say, Britain in terms of people who get done for hate speech. In Russia, it's like 50 odd, and in Britain, it's hundreds and hundreds. And yet somehow Russia is this terrible country. I'm sorry, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have in Russia, technically they have hate speech laws, but they work a different way to ours, I'm told. Because the thing about our hate speech laws is they're to defend immigrants who come over here artificially and are planted here against our wishes, whereas in Russia, you've got all these minority ethnic groups who are there because they've lived there since day one. So it's a different dynamic there.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't get it. Like if Putin is really Putla, as the Western MSM tries to say, why is it that speech is more free in Russia today than it is in Britain? Which is the truth. It is. In terms of prosecutions, it absolutely is.
Yeah, what was it? What was it, man?
I do totally agree, by the way, John Best. And for once, the Chinese get things right. So do carry on, Mitch. I beg your pardon for interrupting.
I was going to say, I don't know what we make of the whole, what is it, but this Natsok incursion into Russia where they've got like 8 kilometers worth of land just raiding across the border for some reason. And you look at all these guys and they're all like, because it turns out they're part of what's called the Freedom of Russia Legion or something like that.
Yeah, they're supposedly disaffected Russians, yeah?
Yeah, but like when you look at them, they're all like bloody Natsok or whatever. That sort of crowd.
I heard, and I don't know. I heard, Mitch, and I don't know how true it is, that was actually planned by the British Ministry of Defence. Wouldn't surprise me because it was basically a big raid with that wasn't going anywhere. It was just a raid, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they had loads of like
good for
NATO
good
equipment.
for publicity. Kills a load of people, but doesn't do much.
Yeah, and the thing is, like this freedom of Russia movement, as they're called, like they're just they're completely gay-opt. They look kind of like the Azov Brigade, where they call themselves National Socialists and all this, but then they serve the will of Washington and Kiev. So it's just like, to my mind, it's just some LARP where they just say, "Oh, it's just well, at best, the National Socialism, in their own view of it, is just basically just hating Russians. That's about it." And as well as serving the same neocons, I'd put them in jail over here.
But Mitch Zelensky, who is Jewish, is absolutely not in support of the Azov units in Ukraine. Is that not right?
He tried to disband them apparently a few years back, but he just got confronted by them, and they just manipulated him, or rather threatened him with assassination if he dared try to disband them, because it's like they've got a lot of, because they were given a lot of autonomy by the previous government, especially around in the Donbass area, where they were just allowed to do their own thing so long as they just got to kill Russians, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but like when the Russians captured Mariupol with a load of Azov dudes, they were getting these guys to strip off their tops to see all the Nazi tattoos they had, which just made me laugh, to be honest. It really did.
Yeah, it's especially ironic when you look at because you get the actual National Socialist like administrators I had in the area back in World War II. They all hated the Ukrainians. They just regarded them as subhuman, especially Stepan Bandera and his lot for what they did to the Polish. So it's like, it's ironic that they put a lot up as a people who would have put all those Ukrainians in bloody death camps or whatever, because the Germans back in World War II weren't particularly fond of the Ukrainians at all for what they did to the Polish, which rather tells you a lot.
Look, I tell you, Mitch, look, I don't care what race, creed, or color people are. I'm not in favor of killing women and children. I'm just not. Sorry. And I was a soldier for like about 12 years. I don't like killing women and children. I think it's a shit thing to do. That's my basic thinking. So and Bandera, as you said earlier, you know, his supporters would go into various non-Ukrainian areas of Ukraine and literally with machetes and axes and stuff chop up women and children. That was the main thing they used to do, and old people, of course. But you know, how is this like something we should be supporting as British people? I don't understand it myself. I really don't.
Yeah, I was just answering him, going out to Doxasic Drape. I mean, I don't know what happened to him. I heard he was in St. Petersburg, where you have these like babushkas who are renting out flats in St. Petersburg, and they're saying only Slavic people, no Turkics or no non-Russians need apply. I don't know what happened to that. I mean, St. Petersburg is a pretty liberal city in Russia, so I don't hold it much hope for. I don't hold it much hope for that babushka, but I mean, she's pretty based. But I don't know what will happen to her because, as I said, St. Petersburg, pretty liberal city. I mean, it's very.
And for anyone who doesn't understand, that babushka is like a grandmother. It's your granny, basically.
Yeah. So, what did I say? Yeah, it's like I know in Russia you can have accounts that support the likes of Ukrainian groups, and you don't get banned off social media, which you'd think when Russia's at war with Ukraine, they'd be banning anyone who dares support Ukraine online. But like, I know of like Russians who online post like "no to war" or I don't particularly like my country invading" or whatever. they don't get their accounts banned at all. They don't get visits from the GRU or the FSB or any of these lot. They don't get harried at all for going against their own country in this time of war, which I don't fully understand. But it's like they said, like as you said earlier. I mean, Russia's not free from the West for speech.
Adam in the chat is saying, Tumor saying, putting those HIMARS to good use. These are rocket systems that were sent to Ukraine. And that, like Patrick Lancaster. Now, Patrick Lancaster is an American who served in the United States Navy. He's a U.S. veteran, but he's married to a Russian lady, and he was dodging HIMARS recently in his most recent video that were absolutely just aimed at civilians. They weren't aimed at like Russian forces. They were aimed at civilian people in a town. Go and look at his latest video on YouTube. Like you can go and check it out. I presume you saw that, Mitch, because I put it in our Discord. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why for some reason, but yeah, I really ought to check up on Patrick Lancaster. I mean, I follow his Telegram, but I don't keep a hold of him as much as I should do, to be fair. So it's more that like
like I said, he's a United States Navy veteran who's married to a Russian girl. The USN veteran who's married to a Russian girl, and he's as far as I can work out, he's just trying to tell the truth. And you very often will see when he does his videos that he'll go into these towns that have been involved in the war, and he'll take food and supplies for the women and children and the little old ladies, the babushkas, as you're saying earlier, and he does that a lot.
Yeah,
Lancaster is in no sense communist. I don't think he is at all. Not at all.
I don't think he's ever been political, to be fair, from what I know of him.
No, I've never seen him say anything political.
He's pro-Russia, but I haven't seen him post anything other than that. He's also pro-Armenia with the whole Armenia versus Azerbaijan war. But that's the only other thing he said. I've never seen him go really political. But basically, like I said, he's a war reporter. He goes into places where he gets shot at sometimes, and I've seen him at least 3 or 4 times take supplies to families who are in the war zone and don't have bread or meat or anything. And he'll take them supplies, which to me makes him a good man. Yeah, then you got that Oil Grey who went AWOL, only to be found out that he just went missing because he lost his way, not particularly because he got killed off by Ukrainians or anything. So there's good news there.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and this is another dude. As far as I understand, I might not have got this wrong, but I believe he used to be ex-British Army at one stage, and he's another dude who's married to a Russian girl. And the only thing he does is he'll go into the Russian-controlled territories, and he'll take humanitarian aid for women and children and stuff, including toys for kids and stuff like that. And I don't see why anyone would slag you off for doing that. He's helping women and kids. Why is that a bad thing?
You are aware of who NAFA are on Twitter?
No, I'm not. Oh, you mean the neo-shills?
Yeah. You'll see them just basically saying Patrick Lancaster ought to get done in prison or to get killed off by a Ukrainian artillery shell because, he does his shtick, which is whole like undercutting the Ukrainian narrative. So always like NATO shows. The thing that befuddles me so much about these NATO shows is, they're all privileged Westerners just crying out for Ukrainians to just charge into the Russian lines where droves of men just get killed.
Yeah.
And so these are all privileged Westerners are just, I mean, I posted back on my Discord a few days ago or whatever, where I said, I can really bring myself to hate these people in a way I could never thought I could hate someone, because it's just all privileged Westerners, just like endlessly
look,
hate posting.
you were talking about that. You were talking about that, Mitch. You were talking about that nice little Russian girl who does travel videos.
Yeah, she went to Australia,
weren't you?
Because
she's a nice little red-headed Russian girl who does travel videos. They're not at all political. She just does. I went here and went to this restaurant and looked at this zoo, or went wherever she went. She doesn't do anything political at all. Leave her alone.
Yeah, but of course, like you have that, you have all these people on like NATO side Twitter where they just post endlessly about how much I hate Russians. Like we just talk about Russians in the same way that I know.
Yeah, I don't get it, mate. I don't get it. I will just mention this. Look, I'm not a big fan of Coach Red Pill, who is Gonzalo Lira, but he was arrested by the Ukrainian secret police, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, Mitch, something like that. Yeah. And I haven't heard anything about the poor bastard since then. So there we go. What is it? The SBU are the Ukrainian secret police. And I haven't heard anything about him since then. But I'm not a big fan of Coach Red Pill, and I think he was an idiot and he should have pissed off out of Ukraine a long time ago. But on the other hand, does he deserve to die? No, absolutely not.
But I do wonder, like, so for example, he hasn't learnt the language in the years that he's been in there. So that's already a red flag for me, the fact that he refuses to learn the language. And it's like he shows for the Russians amidst a country who currently getting invaded by the Russians. I don't understand why he didn't just move to Belgorod or move to Moscow.
100%.
Or even just move to Donbass, because that'd be a lot safer for him, even just about all the artillery shells flying about. Because
maybe he was less bright than he pretended to be, but
I think he's just like,
I still hope he doesn't get killed anyway.
No, they'll probably just bully him in prison or whatever. That's probably what he'll get. Like they'll just, because I mean I've heard like he's narcissistic apparently. So
well,
I mean
for sure, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
yeah. All right, guys, we've been talking this subject for a long time, and this is an Anglo-Celtic extreme, basically. So let's slightly change. Apparently, Nigel Farage is threatening to come back. What do you reckon, Mitch?
Great if he does, because he's the only figure we got who actually unites the right.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, I have my problems with Nigel and what he did to UKIP, but if he came back, that would be a game changer in Britain. If he came back and headed the party, what's it called, Mitch?
Reform, isn't it?
Yeah, if he came back and said, "Yeah, I'm the head of Reform," and stood as a member of Parliament himself, that's a game changer, I reckon.
Yeah, because I mean, at this point, the Conservatives surely should go for another 1997 moment where we just get completely obliterated.
I think it will be far worse than that, Mitch. I like at the moment, the Conservative Party are on course to be more destroyed than they've ever been destroyed prior to World War II. Like, honestly, there is no way that they're not. And to me, I think that's on purpose. because I think the so-called conservatives, in inverted commas, and the Labour Party are really a uni party, just like the mainstream Republicans and the Democrats are in the USA, or the Liberals and Labour are in Australia. I think we all have uni parties now. Really.
Yeah. I'll be right back.
No worries, mate. But yeah, I think we all have uni parties now. There is minor differences between the so-called, in inverted commas, Conservative Party and the Labour Party in the UK. The Liberals, stroke Nationals, and the Labour Party in Australia, and the mainstream Republicans and the Democrats in the USA. They're all uni parties. Your vote doesn't matter if you vote for those guys, because they all basically want the same thing. If you don't realize that, then you're an idiot, basically, at this stage. But yeah, that's my view on this. I know in America they're talking about the difference between Trump and DeSantis. I don't know. The one thing I would say is that Trump has said he would try and stop the war in Ukraine, which I think would be a good thing. Partly because I don't want to die in a nuclear exchange, but whereas DeSantis won't at all. But on the other hand, you got to look at what's been going on for years now. Like, everyone in UK wants mass immigration to stop, but none of the major parties will do it. They just won't.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Trump, I don't know whether he'll get re-elected, because do we think that he's learned from 2020, or do we think that he'll just flop again and it will just get shafted by the same establishment?
Do we think he'll even be allowed to win? Because 2020 was not a fair. 2020 was not a fair election. All right. Yeah, loads of morons in America voted for Biden. Sure, they did. Did most morons in America vote for Biden? Not so sure about that.
I won't say the morons. It's more they were just such spiteful mutants who thought, okay, anything ever other than Trump. So everyone knows that Biden is what. You might as well just call him a paedophile at this point with what he does to little children. But that doesn't stop people from voting for him.
True.
Yeah, so they're willing to vote for paedophile just because they don't like Trump. There's no negotiations or any sort of good chat to have with these people. They're just all complete demons.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mitch. I have my doubts that anyone is going to allow Trump to win the next election, because I don't think American elections are in any way, shape, or form really democratic. Well,
so someone coined the term guided democracy, which is technically we're allowed to vote, but we're only meant to vote a certain way. And if we dare to vote another way, we just generally get bollocked for years upon years with propaganda and what have you, until we change our mind.
Yeah, so, look at Brexit. Brexit was a clear vote, and it was mostly against mass third-world immigration. And it's just totally been subverted. Who voted for Rishi Sunak? I was no fan of Liz Truss at all, but at least she was voted for by the members of the Conservative Party. No one voted for Rishi Sunak at all, ever. He was just parachuted in.
Yeah, in the case of Trump versus DeSantis, I don't know what to think about Because, I mean, DeSantis, I don't really know what to make of him. I mean, for example, what is it? So he'll sign a law that forbids criticism of Israel, and he actually goes to Israel to sign it.
Yep.
That's just a massive red flag from me from the get-go.
Yeah, look,
Trump's not much.
DeSantis is okay on some things that are internal American. Although I wish we had someone like Don the Plebble on this stream who could speak as an American. But DeSantis is okay on some things in America, but he's very much in favor of keeping on, as far as I understand, he's very much in favor of keeping all these American overseas wars going all the time. Whereas Trump isn't. Trump has said if he becomes president, he will try and make a peace deal in Ukraine, for example, which to me is like fairly a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, in the case of, I mean, I've heard like Sargon's take, which is he doesn't want there to be DeSantis going against Trump because they're arguing off the same base. And yeah, that's true. Because I mean, I can agree with
but
Sargon
only one of them can be the Republican candidate at the end of the day.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? Like you have half the Republican Party who are pro DeSantis, and the other half who want 2016 back again. But that's the thing, isn't it? Is like as Trump learned, I don't really know. As for the whole Ukraine thing, I remember like DeSantis, he was asked his position on Ukraine. He flip-flopped so much that he actually hurt his ratings because no one could trust him on aspects of foreign policy.
He strikes me as a neocon on foreign policy, to be honest, and like I reckon they're the worst of the worst. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the theory that DeSantis company cooks on foreign policy, especially forever wars in the Middle East. Although I don't think they're possible anymore because of the way the Middle East is now. He'll agree with like neocon stuff, so long as he gets to do conservative stuff domestically. But I don't really know how feasible that would be in practice.
Yeah. Wiggle says, "Is my ceiling yellow?" Yeah, it's getting there, but if it gets too yellow, that's kind of what you do, you know. But yeah, sorry, Mitch, carry
on. I can't think of anything else to say about DeSantis or Trump.
Trump was in. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an American, so I think I'd probably incline to Trump a bit more than DeSantis, but are either of them going to save you? I doubt it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's what I mean. Apparently, Trump has also promised to pardon everyone involved in January 6th, which...
Well, why didn't he do it before when he was president, for God's sake?
Yeah, because I mean,
one guy just got 18 years, I believe. 18 years in prison for January 6th.
Yeah, that's pretty much my argument of why I can't really get arsed with Trump. Is just
because when you're the president and you're about to stop being president, as far as I understand it, and if there's Americans watching us, they can tell me if this is the truth. So far as I understand it, the last thing a president gets to do is pardon people. So why didn't he pardon the January 6th people?
Yeah. That's why I can't really get enthusiastic for Trump, to be honest. But what was the point? Lost my train of thought now. I said about Sargon, but like his take on it, which is basically he doesn't want to see Trump versus DeSantis because it tears the Republicans apart. But I don't know.
But at the end of the day, Mitch, one of them will win. So it's not like in UK. Like in UK, we've got, I don't know, I can think of 8 or 9 right of center little parties who all hate each other for the most part. And that just splits the vote, and it's ridiculous. But that won't happen in America because either Trump or DeSantis will win. And then if you're a right-wing dude, you'll vote for those guys, I mean, I probably marginally hope it's Trump rather than DeSantis, but marginally. But I'm not an American, so it doesn't make any difference. But, do you not think that's true?
Yeah, because that's when the American system works a different way to ours, doesn't it? But although one could argue by saying, let's say all the DeSantis supporters who were Trump supporters back in 2016, for argument's sake, let's say there's a bitter campaign between Trump and DeSantis, and Trump wins by the skin of his teeth. How do we know those DeSantis voters? How do we know they're not just going to be so embittered that they just stay home rather than vote for Trump? Trump then loses to Biden again, and then there's just no hope go onward for America in terms of the next 4 years.
Mitch, I'm not American, as I say repeatedly. I'm an Englishman who lives in Australia. But I will say this. I don't think the deep state in America is going to let either Trump or DeSantis win at the next election. But we'll see. But I don't think they'll let either of them win. And I don't think people need to stay at home for that to happen. I just, more and more states are allowing voting by mail and every sort of lie and dishonest nonsense that you can do. So yeah, I'd be surprised if the left in America allows. The left's probably not quite the right word, but anyway, if the woke people in America and the corporate globalists allow any Republican to win the next election, I'd be amazed, actually.
Yeah, because I don't know what Trump would do. Let's say, for argument's sake, they do another Biden on him with a lot of dead people voting for Biden or whatever. What can
there
Trump
were people who were born when the American Civil War was going on who voted at the Biden election. That's like 1865 at least.
Yeah, you gotta give them A for credit, though. I mean, they even got resurrected by Biden, the Night King, just to vote for him because they don't like Trump.
The most popular president America has ever had, and he's a totally senile pedophile. All right, then.
Took my words right in my mouth.
Oh man, I just can't believe it. It's really. I mean, people used to take the piss out of Trump, and all right, Trump's not the most refined man that America has ever produced, but like compared to Biden, for God's sake.
I mean, it's what it was funny. I mean, to be fair, I quite like the Trump years back when, for example, you have the ITV and BBC seething over him calling Haiti a shithole.
Which he is, but
no one I knew in my personal life actually disagreed with Trump. They just disagreed with him using the word shithole because it's not fitting of a president. But aside from that, they agreed with the sentiment. But for some reason,
look, Trump was not the most refined man who's ever been US president. So what? Didn't worry me much, to be honest with you. I just wish he finished down. But anyway.
Yeah. And then you got what? Oh, Tim Scott, I think his name is. He was like this black Republican. And yeah, I mean, I've seen some people trying to big him up apparently, but I don't know. I won't be surprised if they just try to groom him to be sort of a Republican to replace Trump and DeSantis later on, because the Republican Party just has to be on the same ground as the left in terms of in terms of like, oh well, we're not racist. We've got minorities in the party and all this. Which
Mitch, I totally agree with Paul Gottfried on this, and Paul Gottfried is brilliant. Go and look him up on YouTube.
I don't really know much about it,
most
so
Black
I'll go off your
Americans
word.
most Black Americans are never going to be Republican, and trying to attract them to the Republican Party is a basic waste of time, in all honesty.
Yeah, it's
You'll get a few, but you'll never get enough to make any difference. It's not worth it. Can I also say hello to Patriotic Archive, who I've just put up in the chat. A very good traditional music channel on YouTube. Go and check him out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you've heard about this, but apparently, so fertility rates in the third world have actually started to drop quite a bit. Like, for example, 10 years ago, the fertility rate in sub-Saharan Africa was like 7.29, I think it was. Now it's gone down to 5.35. And I reckon in over 10 years' time, it's going to have come down to like something like between 3 and 4 per woman. So it looks like the birth rates of the third world are beginning to thin out, and perhaps in 50 years' time, there won't be enough third worlders to migrate into the West. But I don't know. Perhaps it'll be too late by then because we've had so many. But I don't know what people would say about that. Fertility rates in the third world dropping, and it's dropping more drastically than they have done in the West among white people. So that's something to be said as well.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Because it's like I've heard because the same guy who said about
I just think
sub-Saharan.
by the time what? Sorry, carry on, Mitch.
I was going to say, so it's like you get these birth rates which are dropping quite drastically, and it's like because the white birth rate has been low for a bit. However, there's also the argument we did it first, but then we'll be the first to rebound on the upwards when the trend inevitably turns. So, and also because another thing is, especially in America, you have like these sort of religious groups like Mormons and Amish and so on, who and actually have high birth rates anyway. Latin Americans, for example, like Mexicans and all these lot, they don't have anything like that in their own countries. So their birth rate is just going to plummet and plummet. And these other groups who normally go on about how the brown man will inherit the earth from a white man in America, it looks like that's not going to come to pass because their birth rates are dropping like a damn bucket.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think that like when you look at like the surveys that show white Anglo-Celtic children will be a minority as children in Britain by 2040, we ain't got long left, man.
Yeah, which is like because I mean, on one hand, yeah, this like there's one thing about immigrants is that when we're into the third generation, which is, I mean, sad enough to say, but the fact that we haven't discussed that, but yeah, it's generally their fertility rates become lower than ours. But as I said, you know, a lot of the immigrants out here now, they're like first or second generation. It'll be by 2040, it'll be the third generation, but there might be so many of them. So it's like a mixed pill to begin with. It's like on one hand, it can be a white pill at times because their birth rates are dropping like a bucket as well, and they're late to the party. So when their birth rates rebound, inevitably it'll be far later than our birth rates. But then there's also a black pill because there's so many of them here. But it will still hit hard even if their birth rates drop, just because it's going to be a long process and whatnot.
Maybe so. I don't know. I just don't think we've got that long left, to be honest with you. Josephina Herring says Patrick archive is just military-related music. No, he also does folk songs and that kind of stuff as well, Josephina. So, yeah, not just that. All right. I think we're going to finish up here with what do we think about Farage coming back? What do you reckon, Mitch?
Be great because he's the only figure that can unite the right in the UK.
100%. That's my feeling too. Look, I don't like some of the things Farage did. I don't like what he did to UKIP when he left, and the person who he personally anointed as the UKIP leader, who was totally crap. But yeah, if he came back, especially if he came back as he's talking about now as a new but much bigger deal about Brexit, yeah, I think he could change almost everything if he did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many MPs Reform could get because if you had Nigel Farage just talking about the $1 million a year mass immigration alone,
Which
that
it
could
is.
just tip. Yeah, that could tip a lot of Conservative voters to just switch to Reform because, as we've said,
I'll tell you. Look, mate, I tell you, and I follow this fairly closely. Many long-time Conservative voters have just had enough of the Conservative Party under Sunak. They've just had enough.
Yeah, it's like I do genuinely think of the Conservative. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
As I say, the Conservative Party is basically like a sinking ship at this point because they're going to get screwed hard in this next election. Labour's almost certainly going to win unless you have a situation where, because I don't know what's going to happen to the SNP because I've heard their polling has dropped quite a bit after Sturgeon got removed.
And the same thing to a lesser degree also happened with the Welsh nationalists. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I don't really know. Plaid Cymru, don't we have I know in terms of the MPs in Parliament, we only have 1 or 2, I believe.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, Mitch, the same thing that happened with Sturgeon with the SNP, and of course, as many people realise, the Scottish National Party has more, probably has more Irish immigrants to Scotland than it does actual Scottish people. But that's always been the case, or it's been the case in recent years. But the same sort of thing that happened to Sturgeon, i.e., a scandal, happened to Plaid Cymru, which is the Welsh National Party. And both of those are only going to help Labour. They're not going to help anyone else. And it's surprising that these happen just before we're about to have a national general election, don't you think? Particularly when, the Labour Party in particular hugely depends on Scotland for majorities.
Yeah, it'd be a bit of a blacker if, let's say, Scotland were to just... Because, to be fair, it's only going to really be the SNP or Labour Scotland will vote for at this point. I can't see them voting for Conservatives.
Well, except for some of the Highlands and Islands, which tend to be pretty conservative. But apart from that, yeah, all right.
Yeah, it's because to be fair, when I think of Scotland, I don't particularly think of the Highlands. Shameful enough to say. It's mainly
no. You think of Glasgow and Edinburgh like everyone does, which is where the SNP have their major vote. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't Glasgow the main? I know Edinburgh is more on a highbrow compared to Glasgow, where they've had a lot of Irish immigration, because it's you have Rangers versus Celtic.
Yeah, but Edinburgh is also the Scottish equivalent of London with all these middle-class left-wing twats. So bear that in mind.
Yeah, because you got the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is basically just a massive circle jerk about, it's all just like leftist comedians just having a complete circle jerk between one another.
100%.
So,
100%. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Mitch. All I'm saying is it's coincidental. It's entirely coincidental and I am not a conspiracy theorist, to work out that the Scottish National Party and the Welsh National Party both had their leaders destroyed just before a British national election, when both of those parties' leaders being destroyed is only going to help Labour. But I am not a conspiracy theorist. Understand? I'm not.
We're coincidentalists.
Yeah, it's a pure coincidence. It just happened by coincidence. Look, but again, let's get back to this point. I reckon if Farage, and I see all the people in the chat slagging off Farage, and I agree with everything you say, but Farage coming back and heading reform would actually make a big difference, I think. I think like there is an enormous number of Conservative voters and some potential Labour voters, etc., who would switch if Farage came back because he was the face of Brexit. If he came back and he said, look, and my main deal is end mass third world immigration, which he has to do if it's going to do any good. But if he did, yeah, I think he could make a very big difference. There ain't no way. There's no way reform will win the election. I'm not suggesting that at all. But they could end up with a reasonable group of MPs as a start.
Yeah, I hope no. They don't stand against Andrew Bridgen, because I mean Andrew Bridgen's going to need all the help he can get for the next election.
Look, my view is that all of these smaller right of centre stroke populist parties need to agree to not run against each other. That's my view. And I've said it before, like only for like, I don't know, the last 2.5 years. But yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that affects would be negated, however, if Farage stood, because everyone acknowledges Farage as a big player. Whereas if Farage doesn't take over, then that problem resurfaces, and we're back to square one. We're back to square Blair, where we've got just Labour win,
nothing,
Conservatives trounced, right-wing parties getting nowhere because they're all just run by egotistical maniacs who prefer to run against one another rather than unite in a common goal. So
I absolutely 100% agree with that. But like I would also point out, anyone who thinks that the Labour Party under Sir Keir Starmer, who I would remind people was the head of public prosecutions when the whole scandal about so-called grooming gangs, which were actually child rape gangs, when that whole scandal broke, Sir Keir Starmer was the head of public prosecutions, and he made sure almost no one was prosecuted. So anyone who thinks like voting Labour is going to change anything, or Blair is suddenly going to turn us back to Fresh Prince of Blair or whatever that other nonsense AA comes up with, is talking nonsense. Ain't going to happen. Don't vote Labour. If you're right of centre, vote for any of the smaller right of centre parties other than the Conservatives.
Yeah, it's what was the point? Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I do think Keir Starmer will end up winning, even despite, as you said.
Yeah, for sure, he will. I just don't want him to win. I just don't want him to win so much, and I want there to be like a dozen or so actual right of centre MPs who would be a start, and if Farage was one of them, could be a good start.
Yeah, it's like, for example, the normies are all talking about Philip Schofield, who everyone knows how to just be a pervert and a nonce, pretty much. Now, people pretty much fawned to that guy for years, and a lot of people still supported him, despite the fact that he actually admitted that he cheated on his wife with a 17-year-old lad. So, if people are willing to support a guy like that, I do think
70-year-old bloke.
Yeah, and he met this 17-year-old when he was 10, like Flip Schofield did.
Vomit. Sorry.
Yeah, so you can imagine Flip Schofield. I mean, how old's Flip Schofield? What, like 50 or something? And he met this guy when he was 10 years old in school, no less. So you can just imagine how they truly met and how their relationship got started.
Vomit.
Yeah, if people are willing to support a guy like that in terms of average daytime television, I don't really hold much hope for when they vote in election time and might just vote for Keir Starmer because he says all the right stuff, even though, as you said, about the public prosecution's part. So,
Adam tells me I have a pipe dream. That's very likely true, Adam, but I hope not, because I am a great believer in Great Britain. But there you go. Apostolic Majesty goes live in 10 minutes. Josephina tells me. Well, okay, Josephina. I hope this stream is very well attended, and I'm sure it will be, but like, why are you telling me? But anyway, I don't know. I just feel that there was an enormous support for Brexit, and that enormous support, as far as I'm concerned, was mostly to end mass third-world immigration. Yes, there was some desire to return all the decision-making to Britain, which is where it should be about British policy. But that doesn't work if you've got like an Indian banker like Sunak in charge, or a total vile traitor like Tony Blair. It doesn't work in those instances. So yeah. So I don't get it. Josephina, I do, but you know what? I do my own streams too. And like, if I didn't do a stream because someone else was doing a stream, I'd never do a stream, frankly. So there we go. But yeah, I don't know, Mitch. I do think that there are more base people in Britain than many people think. I think the Conservative defeat of the Red Wall, so-called, under the idiot with the ridiculous hairstyle, was part of that, but he totally let us down. Then you had the fake COVID crap, and then he was replaced by that idiot woman, and that idiot woman was then replaced by someone who was even less voted for, i.e. Rishi Sunak, who is an Indian banker and who is not at all a British person. So I don't know, man. I've always carried on my idea that the basic British people are fairly based, but no one wants to listen to them. And just like in America, like the people who voted for Trump were fiddled out of their president, absolutely the people in Britain were fiddled out of their Brexit for sure. What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Mitch?
I mean, about how many base people there are in the UK. I mean, when it comes to voting time, I mean, who do they vote for? They either vote Conservative or Labour. So
yeah, and you've got to stop. You've got to stop doing that. You've got to stop doing that. Like, if you're right of centre, vote for any of the right of centre populist, in inverted commas, parties other than the Conservatives. You cannot vote so-called Conservative. You cannot vote Lib Dem. You cannot vote for the fucking watermelon greens, and you certainly can't vote for Labour. That's my opinion about this. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Go for it. Go vote for it.
Yeah, I'd say the very fact that there are so many right-wing parties right of the Tories generally demoralises people on our side to begin with from ever voting, because they just go, well, it doesn't matter what I vote for, neither of the parties I would want to succeed actually succeed. So, and if we don't vote, well, the outcome becomes the same anyway. So that's just where a rationality behind it is. Just go, well, what's the point? You know, local elections are a complete kettle of fish because not many people vote in them, so you can get a bunch of lads to canvass and get your guy in power. But MPs, but for actual national elections, yeah, it's different kettle of fish altogether. I generally just spoil my ballot because I had local elections where I could vote for reform, which I did, but national election wise, I can't really get any candidate other than Lib Lab, Con and Green. So I'll just spoil my ballot.
Well,
that's all I do.
Next time, Mitch, if there is another candidate, I hope you'll vote for them rather than spoil your ballot. Because, like Portugal, for example, which is Britain's oldest ally, by the way, less than 40% of people vote in most of their elections, but they still have a left-wing government all the time because that 60% plus doesn't vote. So they end up with left-wing government after left-wing government. Lefties don't care if you don't vote. They like it. You've got to vote against them. And do I think voting really matters? Not really. But it doesn't cost anything either. Like, vote against the regime is the main thing I would say. That's the main thing I would say about it. Mitch, anything you wanted to show?
Nah, not for me.
So you're not on like Twitter or anywhere that you want people to follow you?
Well, I got Twitter account, but I mean, I don't know if like people want to follow it.
Well, that's the point. You need to tell them so they can see. So
Okay.
if you got like a Twitter account or something like that, tell people then go follow you though.
Okay, I'll put in chat then.
Fair enough. I don't know if you can, but if you can't, I'll put it in chat.
Yeah, just put in chat Anglo Gopnik.
All right. I haven't seen it yet. When it comes up, I'll let you know. Put it in the private chat, Mitch, and then I'll stick it in. I probably haven't given you the right permissions. It should be about right for me because I'm useless at this stuff. So there we go. Oh. Copy. Jesus, my internet's being bad this evening. Like really bad, even by my standards. Try not very high. There you go. That's Mitch's Twitter. Do go and follow. So yeah. All right, let's check if we've got any super chats. Apparently, did anyone send me an entropy super chat? Because if they did, Oh, bloody okay on here. I don't know. All right. Okay. All right. Josephina apparently sent me a $5 super chat, which I cannot see on Entropy. What was it, Josephina? Put it in the chat, and I'll answer it, because I don't like not covering people who do that. As I say, I can't see it on the Entropy chat, which I will ask Entropy about later.
Oh.
Oh.
This will be interesting.
Patriarch Archive says the 1939 film The Four Feathers is good and it's free on YouTube. Yes, it is. There's a real gunboat from the 1898 Sudan campaign in that movie, and people say some of the extras actually fought on them, which is possibly true. But anyway, Josephina, what was your super chat? Steve, there are at least about 4, if not 5 versions of that film. So yes, there are later versions. Boom, boom, boom. What am I doing here? No idea at all. Guys, you haven't told me what your super chat was about. Oh, okay. This dude says, I sent you a €10 super chat. All right, mate. Thank you very much for that. Again, I can't see it for whatever reason. I will ask. I'm on Entropy's Discord, and I'll ask them about this after we close. Apologies, Moshansky, and also to Josephina. So yeah, I don't know what to say, guys. I just can't see them. Agreed, Patriarch Archive. The gunboat scene in that movie is very good. Yeah, Type YouTube movies, TV, Master and Commander. Master and Commander is a great film, based on the books of that excellent author, Patrick O'Brien. So, yeah. So, Mitch, anything you want to end with?
Nothing I can think of now.
All right, guys. I apologize very much to Mashensky and Josephina. Can't see your super chats. If you want to ask me a question on the next stream, I do. Put them in the general chat and I'll just answer them. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Go well. I will see you this time next week for the next Splendid Isolation stream. But I do have a stream coming up on the English yeoman who was the Englishman who made up the archers at Agincourt and this kind of stuff for the most part, which I hope will have Rupert August as a guest and maybe somebody else, we'll see. Apologies, a guest who was going to join didn't. I don't know why. I'll find out later. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to Mitch for joining me, and we'll see you soon. Go well, folks. Oh, by the way, I'm going to play us out of a tune if it bloody well plays. Probably won't.
My name is O'Kelly, I could be readily from here to Riley, from Leeds or on the shower, lock now at the tower, and 55 more, all ended in war. Black day, that all lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. Shilling a day, boys, a blooming good pay. I'm lucky to touch it, a shilling a day. Though it drives me half crazy to think of the days I went south for the daisy my side. We rode hell for leather, both squadrons together, that didn't care whether we lived or we died. But it's no use despairing, my wife must go sharing, and decommissating the pay to better. So with me you be holding the wet and the cold by the Grand Metropole, please give me a letter. Oh, Jim, you know it's Sergeant Major. Shilling a day was a blooming good pay. I'm lucky to touch it, a shilling a day.
Okay, that was the excellent Chris Gard. Please go and check out his channel. He's got some great music on there. Thank you very much to Mitch for joining me as a guest this evening. Alice Little apparently sent me a super chat that I didn't see. Alice, next stream I do, ask me a question in the chat. I'll make sure I answer it. And apologies. All right, go well, guys, and we'll see you next time.